Hey everyone, it's Brian, and today we're going to talk about the people of Latin America and where they live. Part 1. People and their origins. Almost everyone understands the importance of language to a culture. It conveys how a person thinks, speaks, and relates to others and their world. However, language can also be a bit misleading, especially to those looking from outside a culture, like many geographers often do. For example, the default language that many people speak in the area traditionally thought of as Latin America is Spanish. If you were to take that at face value, you might assume that most people came from Spain or have a direct connection to Spanish culture, right? Well, as a geographer in training with a little experience already, you hopefully know better by now. Let's explore the varied and very different peoples and cultures of Latin America. In a very broad sense, we have three major breakdowns of people groups in Latin America. We have the native peoples, the European colonizers, and the Africans brought to Latin America against their will as slaves. Now, we will add a couple more people groups to this list here in a moment, but let's first address where these three people groups came from. Native peoples. It is generally agreed that all native peoples in North, Central, and South America are thought to have migrated across Beringia, the land bridge which connected present-day Russia with present-day Alaska, starting as long as 35,000 years ago. These peoples spread across North and South America, over time creating notable cultures such as the Olmec, Inca, Maya, and Aztec. Each of these empires developed a unique structure, language, and cultural complex which, as we'll see in later lessons, still have a major impact on Latin American culture today. Europeans. Beginning with Christopher Columbus in 1492, European conquistadors, colonizers, and explorers moved into Latin America, and by the late 16th century, or the 1500s, most of Latin America was under the control of Spain or Portugal. The Spanish and Portuguese established new cities and fortresses, and killed or enslaved much of the native population, which did not succumb to diseases brought by their European conquerors. Those native peoples who were left were not enough to be the slave labor backbone of these conquered territories, and so the Spanish brought in Africans. From roughly 1506 through 1866, an estimated 8 to 12 million Africans were brought across the Atlantic, with an estimated 3.5 to 4 million going to Brazil alone. This massive influx of forced labor also brought East and Central African culture with it, which mixed into many features of Latin American life, an idea we'll explore more fully later on. Mestizo and Mulatto. For 100 years or more after conquest and colonization, Europeans would make racial and ethnic distinctions based upon a pretty simple idea. There's us, the Europeans, and everybody else. However, not too long after colonization, the emergence of children born of a European parent and an indigenous parent gave rise to the category of mestizo. This word, which is used widely around the world and from many different groupings and categorizations, meant, in Latin America, a person who is of indigenous and European ancestry. In some countries, such as Mexico, this mestizo status created a new culture, which eventually rose up and overthrew European control. In other places, it has been used in a negative context to artificially separate people. Nevertheless, an estimated 40% of people in Latin America are of mixed European and indigenous ancestry. The term mulatto, often used for separating out people as often as mestizo, is meant to refer to a person of African and indigenous ancestry. The number of people identifying with this category varies widely, as it has often been used in a negative connotation, but recently more people have proudly identified themselves as coming from multiple ancestries. Indeed, the vast number of African slaves in Brazil alone have greatly impacted the incredibly unique Brazilian culture seen today. Part 2. Settlement Patterns. So, we've talked a little about who lives in Latin America, but now let's answer the question of where they live. As with almost all human settlement across the world, most people in Latin America originally settled near the coast, or close to rivers and lakes, as these features were then, and remain today, absolutely essential highways of commerce and transportation. It isn't all the same, however. A very unique thing about certain cities in Latin America is their elevation, and there's even a forward capital in Brazil. What's a forward capital, you might ask? Well, let's find out. First, let's talk about the really highly elevated cities of South America, and there are a few. The highest city in South America is La Rinconada, Peru. Sitting at an altitude of over 16,000 feet, the city is home to almost 50,000 people, most of whom make their living from the nearby gold mines. In fact, many of the highest elevated cities of South America are in the Andes and located near a mine, which is the reason most of them exist. On the other hand, both the cities of La Paz, Bolivia at 11,975 feet and Cusco, Peru at 11,200 feet were previous Inca settlements and part of the Inca Empire's vast trade network. Cusco was actually the capital of the empire for a time. Most other cities are built in lowland valleys and near the coast or rivers, as you would expect. Many of Brazil's main cities are built along the central coast. These were the locations set up by the Portuguese colonizers for trading the vast amounts of, among other things, sugarcane, which was grown in Brazil and, of course, the millions of African slaves imported to grow it. Sao Paulo is the largest of Brazil's cities by population, and its sister city just up the coast, Rio de Janeiro, are both situated on areas with deepwater ports and are the drainage point for hundreds of rivers flowing into the ocean from the Amazon. Many of South America's largest and most well-known cities are on the coast, from Buenos Aires, Argentina, to Cartagena, Colombia, to Valparaiso, Chile. One of the most interesting cities in Latin America is Brasilia, the capital of Brazil and its third largest city by population. While many of the cities in Latin America are centuries or even millennia old, Brasilia was founded in 1960. That's right, the capital is less than 100 years old. Additionally, looking at this map, its location is far inland from the coast, an area which had been the economic powerhouse of the country. Why create a new capital out in the rainforest? Well, it was part of an experiment to bring economic opportunity to the rural parts of the country by creating a forward capital, or a capital city specifically moved and built to encourage economic opportunity in a less developed part of the country. As Brasilia's GDP, or gross domestic product, is the highest of any city in Brazil, the experiment looks pretty promising. Cities such as Brasilia are meant to cut down on the inevitable movement from rural to urban, as people who live traditional subsistence-style farming or village lifestyles have found it to be unsustainable. In 1950, just 25% of Latin America's population lived in an urban area. By 2015, that number had grown to 75%. As we discuss environmental impacts, the toll of so many moving to limited numbers of urban areas can be seen, but as with other examples around the world, more people in an already crowded space creates a special set of challenges. From waves of diverse migration and immigration creating an incredible variety of cultural differences to an uncertain future created in part by a colonial past, Latin America presents an incredible case study to the geographer of what can be. Until next time, keep exploring. Hey, hey.